The third season of Solo Leveling begins with the narrator telling us that on the third night after the raid on Jeju Island, military personnel and guild representatives arrived on the island to collect magic stones in case anything unexpected happened. We see Park Jong telling his vice master about a man who once had only a little luck but did everything he could to become the best. His dream was to be a gold medalist, so he trained hard on his own, lost weight to move down a weight division, and followed a strict training regimen. The only thing he wanted was to stand on the Olympic stage, and he was about to achieve that dream. He passed the doping test without any issues. He no longer had nightmares after that fateful night, and his condition was at its peak. However, due to a sudden rush of excitement, he ended up being detected by a magic meter and was unable to participate in the Olympics. His vice master asks if that was his story. Park Jong then says that the man was unable to fulfill his dream but later found a new one, the dream of establishing the best guild in the country. His vice master tells him that it's truly incredible. The vice master notes that everything is very clean, and Park Jong tells him not to worry about that and to start collecting the magic stones, since he doesn't sense any magical presence nearby. However, at that moment, a surviving ant appears before them. Before it can do anything, Park Jong swiftly beheads it. As he sheathes his sword, he reassures the others, saying that even if there are a few ants left, he is there to protect them. His vice master suddenly notices something strange in the nest. Park Jong asks what's wrong, and at that moment, some soldiers accompanying them quickly turn and demand to know who a mysterious figure is. Suddenly, a powerful-looking being appears before them. The master of the Knights Guild, Kong Tae-shik, can only think that the only people on the island should be the association members who assigned them the mission and the soldiers accompanying them. He immediately orders the figure to identify itself. A hunter warns them not to shoot because the being is not a monster. Park Jong yells that they are in a restricted area and warns that if the figure doesn't comply, they will have no choice but to open fire. However, the mysterious being responds in an unknown language. Suddenly, another person snaps their fingers, and all the hunters immediately collapse unconscious. Another panel reveals that every single one of them has fainted. The mysterious being asks the newcomer what they are doing. The newcomer responds that there is no need to cause a scene and that they should just let the humans sleep for a while. Then, they ask if the first being wants to confirm something. The first being replies that they are sure of their power. The newcomer says they don't understand why the first being is helping humans. The first being responds that they don't know either, but if the newcomer is curious, they should ask themselves. Then, they mention a rotten insect smell and say that if she had seen this, she would have gone crazy. However, their companion ignores them and simply states that the hunt will proceed as planned and that nothing has changed. Without further ado, they open an impressive portal before them. Upon seeing this, the first being says that it seems like someone was already here. They ask their companion if they should take care of things since they are already there. The white-haired being responds that they will, but they should leave this place to them. The first being asks if they are trying to avoid getting involved, to which the other replies that they can see it that way if they want and that they should just leave. The white-haired being then closes the portal. The first being calls them a coward and then turns to look at Park Jong, who is lying unconscious on the ground. After thinking for a moment, they decide not to cause a scene this time. Using their claws, they open a portal and leave, sparing the lives of the Knights Guild hunters. Meanwhile, in Korea, we see SungJinwoo dressed in a suit, surrounded by dozens of cameramen. As he walks in complete silence, we hear the public's opinions on what happened on Jeju Island. Some people have started to admire him. Jinwoo reflects that the Jeju Raid was his first mission after becoming an S-rank hunter. As he recalls everything that happened during that mission, he notes that it was essentially his debut. When people talked about the raid, his name was always mentioned. However, he also acknowledges that if he had entered the Jeju Raid earlier, there would have been fewer casualties. He admits that the criticism was somewhat justified since people were sacrificed due to his delayed arrival. While thinking about all of this, Jinwoo walks toward Min Byung-gu's coffin to pay his respects. As he leaves, at 4:42, he passes by Baek Yoon-ho, who tells him to keep his head up because he was the one who ended this tragic chapter. He then thanks Jinwoo before walking away. Before leaving, Jinwoo and Cha Hae-in see each other from a distance. As soon as their eyes meet, Cha Hae-in quickly looks away, embarrassed, and upon seeing her react that way, Sun doesn't even know what to do. It is then revealed that during the fifth incursion to Jeju Island, 4,801 hunters participated, with 727 of them having a normal awakening, 64 having a double awakening, and 32 common hunters losing their lives. This tragedy had the lowest casualties and injuries compared to the 4 previous attempts. After this, we see Sun meeting with President Go Gun-hee for coffee. The latter asks him if his plan is to create a guild and adds that S-rank hunters do not need licenses to become guild masters. All they need is a call to the Hunter Association, and they will take care of the rest. Sun accepts the offer while thinking that he should take this opportunity to learn the advantages of being an S-rank hunter. However, at that moment, the president asks if he placed some kind of barrier on Jeju Island. Sun, confused, asks what he means. The president explains that there was an incident where people fainted while collecting magic crystals. All of them were A-rank hunters, including members of the Knights Guild. He asks if Sun forgot to mention that he set up a barrier, but Sun replies that he did nothing of the sort. The president then says he suspected as much. Sun asks what the fainted hunters said, and the president replies that they remember nothing before losing consciousness. Currently, they do not know if they were attacked by magic or something else. Sun remains silent, wondering if an ant trap was still active. Just then, an assistant calls for the president's attention, and he tells Sun that his guest has arrived early, so he must leave. He thanks Sun for his time. As Sun prepares to open his car door, someone calls out to him from behind. Adam White introduces himself as the chief agent of the United States National Hunters Bureau. Handing over his card, he tells Sun to just call him Adam and explains that he had hoped to meet him at his office. But since Sun is hard to find, he had to arrange a meeting there instead. Sun wonders if this man went to his office, but then recalls that Jinho had mentioned a foreigner looking for him. Sun asks why he wanted to meet, and Adam replies that he has information for him, something he has probably never heard before. This information does not exist for any other country or institution except the United States. Sun remains silent for a moment before asking why they would share such information with him. Adam responds that revealing it to the right person also benefits them. Adam then says that originally he was supposed to meet Sun alone, but after the Jeju Island Raid, the deputy director was so impressed that he now wants to meet Sun in person. He will explain the rest. However, Sun simply opens his car door and states that he is unsure whether the information is trustworthy and will call them after thinking it over. Seeing this, Adam plays his final card, asking if he has heard about an awakening that can enhance another hunter's abilities. This piques Sun's interest. As a result, Sun agrees to meet Michael Connor, the deputy director of the National Hunters Bureau. Adam immediately says he will handle the translation since Michael does not speak Korean. Michael gets straight to the point, offering Sun documents that would allow him to move to the United States whenever he wishes. He adds that such papers usually take 1 or 2 years to process, but for hunter SungJinwoo, things are different. If he wants, he can also become a US citizen immediately. Sun's expression turns serious as he states that he only came because Adam claimed they had important information. Without waiting, he asks if the ability to enhance another hunter's power truly exists. Michael replies that the person possessing this ability is already here. He instructs one of his guards to escort Miss Selner into the room. The moment she steps into the room, Sun's eyes widen in surprise. Michael explains that the only person in the world who can help hunters exceed their limits is Miss Norma Selner. Sun remains silent, noting that she has an aura very different from other awakened individuals. Michael then asks Miss Selner to explain her ability to Sunday. She turns to him and asks if he finds it hard to believe, explaining that all hunters react the same way at first. However, once they experience it, they have no choice but to accept it. Miss Selner continues, saying that as Sun knows, all awakened beings have a limit, and no one can surpass it unless they experience a second awakening. This is basic hunter knowledge. Finally, she answers Sun's question directly. Yes, she does have the ability to help others surpass their limits. At that moment, Michael interrupts to confirm her statement but adds that once she uses her power, she needs a long rest, so only a select few can benefit from her ability. Every year, upon hearing this, Sung thinks to himself that perhaps he is one of those few chosen ones. And regardless of whether that is true, it is an astonishing ability. So he decides to ask them how effective it is, to which Selner responds that it depends on the person, but that once the process is completed, their power increases by at least 20% or even up to 30%. Upon hearing this, Sung can only think that now he understands why Hunter Dong-soo decided to move to the United States despite all the criticism, because no one could refuse such an increase in power. And surely all the other hunters would die for it as well. The thing is, Sung begins to say that if this information were to leak to the outside world, it would be. But before he can finish, Michael tells him that this is precisely why Selner is with the United States, as they take responsibility for her safety and pay her a reasonable sum. That way, Miss Selner helps the hunters they select to reach a higher level. Lastly, he adds that what they are offering him is the chance to increase his power using Miss Selner's ability. Upon hearing this, Sung asks if it's more of a deal than a gift. Michael then tells him that if he becomes a U.S. hunter, they will ensure he is the first to receive these benefits. Additionally, to create a deal with the best conditions, they can make an arrangement with the guild of his choice. However, he assures him that there is no need to feel pressured now, as they are simply there to help him take the first step. Then, Selner tells him that they forgot to mention something. The power increase from her abilities will be a gift. Michael confirms this and asks Sung if he agrees to unlock his potential. Sung, however, just suspiciously asks if it will be free of charge. But before Sung can decide, Selner takes his hands and asks him to look into her eyes closely, saying that this is the first step. As soon as this happens, Michael smiles, thinking that Sung is falling for it. He notes that although Sung has remained calm so far, once he experiences the first stage, he will surely contact them again. If he is impatient, he might even sign the contract right there. As Selner holds Sung's hands, she recalls the Jeju Island Raid. Go-To Ruji, the man who was expected to become a national-level hunter, had failed, while the raid was easily completed using an unheard-of ability. She wonders where SungJinwoo's limits lie, but now it is she who is shocked, beyond any limits she had imagined. Suddenly, a darkness as deep as the night surrounds her, and the only thing she can see before her is a massive figure towering over her. As the scene focuses on the figure's face, it becomes clear that it resembles Sung. But then his eyes open, burning with fury. At this, Selner can only let out a scream of terror. The moment this happens, the guards immediately aim their weapons at Sung and demand to know what he has done to Miss Selner. However, Michael immediately tells them to stop, asking if they have any idea who the person in front of them is. Without hesitation, he bows before Sung and apologizes for his agent's rudeness. But Sung simply looks at Selner in surprise, wondering what is happening. He tells them it's fine. Michael then tells his agents that if this had happened in front of Thomas Andre or Lu Zhang, they would already be dead. He tells them to keep that in mind. Michael notices that Selner is sweating excessively and asks if she is feeling unwell. Since she does not respond, he turns to Sung and says that Miss Selner is not feeling well today. He asks if they can contact him at another time. Then, he instructs Adam to escort Sung home, and Adam agrees immediately. Once alone, Michael asks Selner what happened. Trembling uncontrollably, she barely manages to say that he is a king, an extremely powerful one. Michael, shocked, asks if that means he is close to a national-level hunter. Selner responds that she is not sure, as she has never experienced anything like this before. She explains that he is a different kind of king than the others. When she looked into him, he was already looking back at her. She shudders and corrects herself, saying that it wasn't Sung she saw. It was the infinite darkness within him that was staring at her. Now, she can say with almost certainty that he has no limit. As she says this, we see Sung leaving the building with all the confidence in the world. Meanwhile, President Go Gun-hee mourns the loss of hunter Min Byung-gu, but acknowledges that his sacrifice was noble. He states that while closing a raid in such a way is heartbreaking, there are still more obstacles ahead, and when they come, the next battle may not end with just one sacrifice. Just then, his phone starts ringing, grabbing his attention. And as soon as he answers, he learns that a rank B portal appeared in the middle of a highway. But he immediately realizes that the portal appeared near the offices of the Guild of S. And as soon as he says this, we see S driving his car very calmly. While looking out the window, he says that Selner definitely saw something but wonders what it was, and if he saw a trace of the system. However, upon remembering how it was shaking, he wonders what it was afraid of since his eyes were filled with terror, and he doesn't think he wants to see it again. The thing is, at that moment, he wonders what's happening with the traffic and says that had he known it would be this bad, he would have used the subway. However, at that moment, his phone begins to ring, and as soon as he answers, we see that it's Gogan High, and immediately he finds out that a portal appeared in the middle of the highway. He realizes that this is why there's such terrible traffic. So the president tells him that it seems to be a rank B portal and asks if he could handle it. In response, S asks if he can do it without permission, to which the president can only laugh, asking where he gets permission to clear a portal. S responds that he gets it from the Hunter Association, and upon hearing this, Gogan asks if he knows his position, to which S can only smile and says that he's the boss. At this, the president tells him not to worry, and S simply thanks him. As he arrives at the portal, however, before he can get closer, he's stopped by an agent who tells him he can't pass without permission. But just at that moment, he realizes it's S-rank Hunter SungJinwoo, and from the cars, others begin to recognize him. The thing is, the people tell him that even if he's rank S, they can't allow him to skip the protocol, and they ask if he received permission. In response, S doesn't know what to say, and since he's still on the phone with the president, he tells him he's at the scene, but there's a problem. Without further ado, he hands the phone to the agent, who nervously asks who wants to speak with her. S simply tells her that it's someone she can't ignore. Over the phone, Gogan says that he's the boss. The girl then takes the phone and immediately begins to tell the president that she'll do whatever he says, while S behind her says he'll enter now. Without waiting for a response from the agent, he enters the portal, and seeing him so confident, the agent can only think that she hopes he trips and breaks an ankle. The problem here is that as soon as S enters the portal, it turns red, and upon seeing this, the people wonder what's going on and whether it's because she wished he got hurt. Once inside the dungeon, S says that it feels like a red portal and adds that the exit is closed, meaning he might have to push himself further. Then, while the monsters start surrounding him, he says that either way, this won't be too much for him, and he begins to summon his shadows around him. Without further ado, he decides to finish this dungeon in a day. The battle between the shadows and the monsters begins, and while some fight from the back, the Z-mages explode the monsters by the dozen. Then, while our protagonist watches the destruction, his strongest shadows also launch themselves into the attack. Immediately, we see the monsters suffer the consequences of facing S, as both Iris, Iron, and the other shadows take care of them, brutally beating them. As if that weren't enough, S's biggest warriors also get into action and cause utter chaos. Finally, we see Veru over all the fallen monster bodies, holding one of their heads while letting out a shriek into the air. At this, all I can say is imagine how lively this is. In this way, S continues advancing through the dungeon, still with his hands in his pockets, while his shadows bow to him. In a panel that's beyond epic, our protagonist adjusts his tie while saying it's time to move on to the next objective. Meanwhile, somewhere else on Earth, we see a very scared hunter asking someone who he is. As soon as he asks, we see a mysterious being in front of him, who tells him that he doesn't know either. Then, he mentions something called the fragment of the radiant light and tells him to keep hiding. However, at that moment, a portal activates behind him, and another being appears. Upon seeing him, the first being calls him Yogan and asks what brings him here. Yogan replies that he's here to inform him about something regarding an eastern land. The other being responds that if it's the East Land, that's where the Shadow Monarch is, and asks if he wasn't the one who assigned that place. Then, Yogan says he also has some interesting news for him. It's been confirmed that the area of the Earth contains the brightest fragment of the radiant light. Hearing this, the first being says that this is indeed interesting and that he went all the way there to tell him. Yogan then asks what he plans to do, and the other being responds that if he really doesn't want it, he'll accept it gladly. Either way, it seems like they were deceived. However, he can't finish his sentence because, at that moment, he seems to notice something and then tells the being who just appeared in front of them that they're trying to get in their way again. It turns out it's Z's father, who asks if they're referring to the small eastern land as South Korea, and Hogan asks, what happens if it's like this? But Yogan quickly tells him that they don't have time to play with that type. In response, Hogan turns around to enter the portal with his companion, telling Song's father that if he believes he can follow them, then he should try. As they begin to leave, the hunter starts pulling out his weapons at full speed, saying that he won't let them escape so easily. Without further ado, he speeds toward them. However, before he gets any closer, Hogan stops him with an ice barrier. While halting the impact, a smile reflects on his face, while on Song's father's face, we can see despair. After a couple of seconds of intense force, they create an explosion that is simply impressive. Now, we return to Song's dungeon, where we see a large monster asking if it's him who has finished off all his companions. Then it adds that it's quite impressive, as not only did he manage to reach their main base on his own, but he also understands their language. We now see him standing in front of Song with his entire army. Filled with rage, the monster yells that he has surrounded the place. But when he sees that Song doesn't react, he is a bit surprised. At that moment, Song tells him that he didn't come there on his own and that he must be joking. Without further ado, he orders his army to emerge, and immediately, from all sides, the shadows of Song appear, with the monsters that were surrounding him dead with their swords. As the last ones emerge, Song says it seems the others who were hiding have already fled. As he watches all this, the monster leader receives a blow to the head. He quickly moves his hand to catch what Song threw at him. However, when he opens his hand, he finds the head of one of his subordinates. In response, the monster can no longer contain his fury and tells Song that he's a bastard. However, our protagonist, with all the calm in the world, simply tells his shadows that it's time to begin. As soon as he gives the order, each and every one of his shadows rushes into the attack, with Veru leading the way. When the monsters see this, they also prepare for the onslaught, but Song's shadows are too much for them. They are almost immediately split in half. Two of the monsters manage to advance towards Song, but he simply waits for them with his hands still in his pockets. Before the monsters can get any closer, Tank appears behind him and leaps toward them with his claws out. Seeing this, the monster leader shouts in rage for them to leave his subordinates alone. Upon hearing him, both Igris and Veru turn to look at him, and without waiting for a single moment, Veru speeds past him like lightning, ripping off one of his arms. Then, Igris cuts off one of his legs, completely unbalancing him. At this point, one can only imagine how animated it is. As the leader falls to the ground, almost defeated, Tosca appears in front of him, using his Giant Sim ability. When activating it in gravity mode, he makes the monster sink even deeper into the ground. This is when Song appears in front of the leader and tells him that from now on, he will answer all of his questions. The less resistance he puts up, the less painful it will be. And just as Song is about to give the dungeon leader a real beating, we reach the end of this part of Season 3 of Solo Leveling. You know that if you like this video, you can always leave a like, comment, or share it so that we can reach more people who enjoy anime like we do.